evening, everyone. Happy New Year. I can still just about say that, can't I? And a very warm welcome here to Sandown Park for our South East Regional Conference. My name is Alex Wilson, and earlier this year I was honoured to be elected as Reform UK's first ever member of the London Assembly. So in a little while, I'm going to tell you a bit about what I've been doing on the Assembly in the last 6 months, but I'm also going to be your host for tonight's event. You're going to hear from a range of speakers this evening. Some you'll already know, a couple you might be hearing for the first time. All of them, in their own way, are Reform UK superstars, and I know you'll enjoy hearing what they've all got to say. First up is our party chairman, Zia Youssef, a man with a mission to make sure our organisation is fighting fit for all the electoral challenges coming our way, on both a national level at Party HQ and as we roll out our branch structure in every constituency across the country. This is how we're going to turn this excitement and enthusiasm into votes in ballot boxes and seats in councils and parliament. Please put hands together for Zia Youssef. Thank you.
You all fired up? I'm Zia Youssef. Let me tell you why I'm here. I love Britain. I love my country. It is time for us to stand up and write the next chapter in the great British story.
Nigel Farage has asked me to serve as chairman of Reform UK. It is my honour to accept. I will bring all my energy, all my passion to ensure we achieve our mission of returning Great Britain to greatness.
Our new chairman, Zia Youssef, is professionalising the party at a speed never seen before in British politics. He's been charged with making this party an election-winning force. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our chairman, Zia Youssef.
We will turn this ship around. We will save this country. We will return Britain to being the poised and powerful country we know it can be, and we will leave a Britain for our children of which we can be proud. Thank you very much, Reform UK.
Hello, Reform UK! Well, firstly, I would just like to say what an honour it is to stand here before so many fake Reform UK members. There must be 1,000 of you here. And according to the Leader of the Opposition, you're simply a figment of Nigel's vivid imagination. Welcome to all of you to the Reform South East of England Conference. And what a time it is for us to get together. Because we're on a roll, aren't we? What a remarkable year it's been. A year ago, Nigel Farage was enjoying his retirement. Reform are polling at 8% and climbing fast under Richard's brilliant leadership. Mr. Sunak was still helplessly watching boat after boat penetrate our borders illegally. A year on, Reform is the talk not just of the United Kingdom but of the Western world. We've captured the hearts and imaginations of millions to whom we offer hope. We've opened over 400 branches across the country. We've risen to 24% on the average of the polls. And ladies and gentlemen, Nigel Farage is now the bookmaker's favourite to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Now, almost 50,000 people, 46,000 to be precise, joined Reform in the last 2 weeks of December alone. Just think about that. That's the equivalent of a third of the entire membership of the Tory party, a party which has been around for 190 years, joining Reform in just 2 weeks. A turquoise tidal wave is sweeping the United Kingdom, and it is giving hope to millions across the country. But I'll tell you who didn't have a great festive period. Someone who didn't exactly cover themselves in glory. And that's the Leader of the Opposition. Inexplicably, she made the unwise decision to accuse Reform of faking our membership numbers. You know, she keeps calling herself an engineer. And perhaps she is, in the same way that Rachel Reeves is an economist. Or Keir Starmer, of course, as we all know, is the son of a toolmaker. Well, she's not a very good one. Because she claimed that the ticker was fake, and that she knew this because, and I quote, she had been monitoring the back end. Well, I'm afraid, as has been now widely reported by a number of highly reputable journalists, the FT, the Spectator, Sky News. That actually wasn't a joke, but yeah. The only back-end Kemi had been monitoring is the one that she was talking out of. But we should actually be extremely grateful to the leader of His Majesty's most loyal opposition, because in the preceding 24 hours of that ill-advised, intemperate outburst, Reform UK signed up more new members than in any 24-hour period in our history. So please, let's give Kemi a big round of applause from all of us at Reform. But on a serious note, we're gathered here because we know in our hearts that the country we love, that we dearly love, is in grave danger. We live in a country in which somehow, despite spending £54 billion on defence each year, the number of military-aged males that have entered the United Kingdom illegally via small boats now exceeds the total available soldiers to the British Army. Most are from Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq and Iran. The Tories, and now Labour, have voluntarily inflicted a national security emergency on the United Kingdom. But change is coming. I want you to take a moment to picture the day in just a few years' time when Nigel Farage triumphantly arrives at number 10 Downing Street. He walks into the office, he puts his briefcase down on the desk for the first time and he takes a seat. He picks up the phone to the First Sea Lord and he issues an order. He orders His Majesty's Royal Navy to see to it that not a single unauthorised vessel crossing the English Channel makes it to the shores of the United Kingdom. Now, I'm well aware that the procedure is you go via the Minister of Defence. But I think Nigel should make that call himself, don't you? So our Royal Navy will embark on a humanitarian mission to pick up those attempting this dangerous journey, ensuring nobody is harmed, and they will be taken back to France for their own safety. We will leave the ECHR and replace it with a British Bill of Rights. We will pass legislation making it compulsory that anybody who comes here illegally not only will never be given the right to remain, but they will be deported back to the country from which they came. This is the most tolerant country in the world. But tolerance does have limits, and if your first act upon coming to this country is to break British laws, instead of being given free accommodation and phones, you'll be removed promptly and efficiently. And let me tell you, no unaccountable foreign court will stop us, because we will finally have a Prime Minister who will ensure that the interests of the British people come first. And a Reform government will also do something that Labour refused to do and that the Tories have failed to do in their 14 years in government. Will ensure that a full national independent inquiry is held into the despicable crimes of the rape gangs that have terrorized young girls in this country for decades. It will leave no stone unturned to ensure that justice is done for the victims and their families. It will ensure that the demonic perpetrators and the officials who enabled them by turning a blind eye are brought to justice and made to pay a heavy price for their crimes. We will do the things that are necessary to heal this country, because Reform are the only ones who can. Now, I've made a few jokes at their expense today, but it's no surprise that the likes of the Tories and Labour and the left-wing media look at Reform's progress and think it must be fake, because all of their prior experience means that the level of cognitive dissonance fries their brains. All they have ever known is incompetence, defeatism, division, cynicism, self-serving corruption, resignation to managed decline. So when they're confronted with people like you, ladies and gentlemen, a Reform Party that is highly competent, patriotic, fast-moving and growing at explosive rates, they quite literally cannot believe their eyes. Well, I have a message for them. If you think Reform's membership growth is explosive, wait until you see what a Reform government will do to the British economy and real wages for the British people. It is going to be something to behold. Now, speaking of something to behold, is anyone incredibly impressed by how the Tories saunter around the House of Commons condemning the state of the country? They genuinely seem to have memory hold the fact that they're condemning their own record in government. The Tories spent 14 years as arsonists, and now they want to pose as firefighters. Well, I have some news for them too. Reform will ensure that you never again get a chance to set ablaze the country that we love. Now, we mustn't forget that one of the most powerful drivers behind Reform's momentum is just how united all of us are behind Nigel. You know, the Tories have had 5 leaders in 6 years, 6 leaders in 8 years. It's no surprise that they're so weak and transient, because they have to spend most of their energy, most of their cognitive capacity, watching their own backs. Meanwhile, here at Reform, and I can tell you this as chairman, Nigel and the rest of our MPs and our team, we can focus all of our energies building a movement to make the United Kingdom a poised, prosperous and powerful country once again. Because British people should be among the most prosperous in the world. Instead, we languish 26th in the world in terms of GDP per person. Even though we have so much going for us, 4 of the top 10 universities in the world are right here on these precious isles. A large number, a big percentage of the world's finest engineers are here. And if anyone's in doubt about that, just go and look at the offices of DeepMind, or go and look around the Dyson Institute, or the factory making Rolls-Royce aerospace engines and nuclear modular reactors. We have a leading position in the world in financial services, and we have the best possible time zone. And as someone who built a successful business here in the UK, I can tell you, British people are full of talent, energy and dynamism. The brightest and best, actually, despite the best efforts of our political leaders, are still falling over themselves to come here, yet we actually make it impossible for them. Sadly, it's easier, and this is true, for a convicted murderer to get into the United Kingdom than it is for a Nobel laureate. So why is it that the British people get poorer every year in real terms? Well, it's down to the appalling, incompetent, Britain-hating political leadership this country has had to endure for decades. There's the religious cult of net zero, an appalling theft of hard-working British people's jobs and money to fund the growth of China and India, and the egos of champagne socialists. Speaking of which, I have a quick question for Boris Johnson and Ed Miliband. If renewables are so cheap, why have British people been forced to subsidise renewables to the tune of over £90 billion over the last decade? That's £300 per household per year that they've had to pay in their energy bills out of their post-tax pay while they struggle to make ends meet. All to enrich renewable corporate shareholders. And given all they did was offshore the emissions to China and India, they've done nothing to make our world any cleaner. Make no mistake, this is one of the greatest heists on the British people of all time, and reform will bring it to an end. Now, you may have read the news and seen that Rachel Reeves, our Chancellor, is currently in China as the cost of borrowing for this country, and very soon people's mortgage rates as a result skyrockets. After that horrific budget, it's no surprise that she's fled to the warm embrace of the Chinese Communist Party. Apparently she's keen for ideas to grow. Well, Miss Reeves, let me tell you, while the Tories and Labour obsess about the religion of net zero, the Chinese announced this week that they will produce 4.8 billion tonnes of coal this year. You know, they can barely produce enough coal to power the plants that manufacture all the wind turbines and solar panels that your mad Ed Miliband is buying from them. They must be laughing so hard at us. And then there's the bureaucratic state, which has ballooned to an insane size. 500,000 people are now employed in the civil service, many of whom are working from home, and all being paid on your dime. In the last 7 years, their burden on the taxpayers rocketed by 50% to over £15 billion. Now, in the age of AI with competent leadership, there's no reason that couldn't be cut in half and still deliver a vastly superior service to the British people. But the problem of the bureaucratic state is much more pernicious than that. They act as a suffocating parasite, feasting on the dynamism and hard work of the British people. We have far too many regulations, far too many regulators, and nowhere near enough builders. That's why we will demolish the unelected, unaccountable quangos and unleash the tidal wave of potential in the British people. Now, the reality is the two old parties have spent decades creating these problems. Labour, Conservative, whoever you voted for, in the end it made no difference. You got the same result. And that's why reform is necessary. That's why reform has broken through with such breathless pace. Because in reform, British people see a real alternative. They see history being made in real time. Because the stranglehold that the two old parties have had on the politics of this country for a century now is finally being broken. And you, ladies and gentlemen, are responsible for that. And generations to come will owe you a debt of gratitude. You know, Nigel gave his New Year's message from Blenheim Palace, famous, of course, for being the birthplace of Winston Churchill. Now, this is a man whose legacy has come under assault in recent years. People calling themselves teachers have sought to rewrite history and disparage the legacy of one of the greatest Britons ever to have lived. But their efforts are in vain, because in the end he lives on. He lives on in the people in this room. Those watching at home, the millions of reform supporters across this country who know in their hearts that the time has come for them to stand up and be counted in their country's hour of need. Because we see a future in which the United Kingdom, instead of being ritually humiliated, celebrates triumph after triumph. one in which national pride radiates through the kingdom because our people achieve astonishing feats in architecture and engineering and literature and medicine and sport and all aspects of human achievement, one in which families are bonded together and communities thrive, one of which young people feel fortunate to be a part. That is what reform will deliver. And this is why people are joining us in such droves. You know, we're almost at the 6-month anniversary from when Nigel asked me to be chairman of the party. And we've achieved quite a lot together. Our membership has grown by about 160%. I haven't checked that. You can probably see what the latest numbers are. But from 68,000 to 179,000. We've gone from no branches in the country to over 400 branches across the country. We've gone from 14% of the vote share in the general election of July last year to 24% in the average of the polls. In fact, the latest poll yesterday has Reform UK leading a national opinion poll for the first time. And let me tell you this, in case anyone thinks we're in the mood to slow down, no, we're not. We are just getting started. It's a truism in life that momentum and trajectory are much more important than absolute position. It's true in business, and it's certainly true in politics. And thanks to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, reform has all of the momentum in British politics. But make no mistake, we still have a huge amount to do. And that's why we need your help. We need people like you to step up. We need your courage, ladies and gentlemen. We need your imagination, and we need your energy. We need you to stand for us as candidates. In fact, you will have seen we have members of our team here and our councillors, growing in number almost every week, whom you can discuss becoming a candidate. We also need you to volunteer, to knock on doors and to campaign for reform. Will you do that for us? If we work hard, the sky's the limit as to what we can achieve together. We will elect Nigel Farage as our Prime Minister. We will turn this country around and restore the United Kingdom to its rightful position as one of the greatest countries in the world. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once more, please put your hands together for Reform UK's party chairman, Zia Youssef. I'm very proud to be here with you this evening. Look around you. Just like Leicester and Chelmsford last week, and like Chester will be tomorrow, at each of these regional conferences, there are so many more of us here today than were at our first national conference back in 2021. And that is a real sign of the progress we are making as a party in just 4 short years. But every journey has a starting point. It's particularly good to be here in the South East, where back in 1999, which feels like a lifetime ago, a bright-eyed and bushy-tailed young chap called Nigel was first elected to the European Parliament. And Nigel's journey since then has been stratospheric. And all of us here can now play a part in the next stage of that journey, a journey that ends in Downing Street. Our membership is surging. By the end of tonight, it will have topped 180,000 and counting. Only yesterday, we hit joint first place in a national opinion poll for the first time. And we were on course to gain hundreds of council seats in the local elections in May. And I say were because, as you probably know, many of the councils scheduled to face their public this year are now looking for an excuse to hide. Here in the South East, East Sussex, Hampshire, Kent, Oxfordshire, Surrey, West Sussex, they've all asked the government to delay their elections. There was a temporary glimmer of hope on the Isle of Wight, where the full council voted against but the council cabinet pressed ahead anyway, accusing their critics of spreading misinformation. We've heard that one before. Now, I know there are potentially significant changes, structural changes, afoot in local government, but my message to the other parties, both here in the South East and in every county that's considering these cancellations, use these elections to gain a mandate for the change you want to deliver. If you want more powers, first let your residents judge your record on the ones you already have. Devolution should be done with public support, not done behind the public's back. So my appeal to the council leaders across the region: please do the right thing. Proceed with these elections as planned and let the people decide. But of course, we all know the real reason so many counties are considering cancelling their elections. It's got nothing to do with structural reorganisation and everything to do with stopping Reform UK getting a significant foothold in local government. It's so obvious, it's nakedly political, and it's just plain wrong. But it's why we must never take our foot off the gas. By any measure, 2024 was a year of triumph for Reform UK. At the general election, with our 4.1 million votes, our 5 MPs, we smashed UKIP's 2015 achievements. How many of you spent Boxing Day watching the membership counter tick steadily ever upwards until we surged past the Conservatives? I know I did. And in council by-elections, we're gaining support every week in all parts of the country. And even under first past the post, a system we know conspires to prevent insurgent parties breaking through, we are gaining seats with increasing frequency. And according to my calculations, our average poll score in December was around 22%. That compares to just 8.8% the same time a year earlier. But for us in London, it started a bit earlier in the year, when I managed to win a seat as Reform UK's first ever elected member of a devolved body. And so I now sit as one of 25 members on the London Assembly. Collectively, we are tasked with holding London's Mayor Sadiq Khan to account. And my goodness, there is a lot to hold him to account for. After 8.5 years of Sadiq, London is less safe. It is more congested, and it is harder than ever to get on the property ladder. On crime and policing in particular, Khan has failed. 15,000 knife incidents recorded last year, 52,000 mobile phone thefts. That's 1,000 every week. And in response to an FOI request submitted by my team, the Met Police confirmed that just 2% of burglaries in outer London result in a summons or charge. On our roads, Khan has engaged in a prolonged war on London's drivers through the spread of low-traffic neighbourhoods, the unjustified expansion of the ULEZ tax, and coming soon, he's going to charge you up to £8 a day to use the Blackwall Tunnel, despite me submitting the largest ever petition to the Assembly in its 25-year history. And over the last 15 months, London's Jewish community has faced a persistent campaign of fear and intimidation on our streets. And yet on the Assembly, I found very little support from the other groups in calling out these protests for what they really are. They are hate marches, they are calling for jihad and intifada, and we all know where that ends. And all the while, the cost of government in London goes up and up. A 71% increase in the mayor's share of the council tax since he was first elected in 2016. I think most people would regard that a record of failure. But Keir Starmer thinks it needs rewarding with a knighthood. To a limited extent, the Assembly can also set its own agenda through motions, questions, investigations and so on. And it's here that, as a single member, I feel most alone. When the Labour group proposed a motion to give free travel to illegal immigrants, with the cost to be picked up, as always, by us, the taxpayer, I was the only member to speak and vote against. What did the Tories do? They abstained. They simply sat on their hands. More recently, the Greens, of course backed up by Labour and the Lib Dems, proposed a day of remembrance for victims of the global climate crisis. So you can imagine the horror on their faces when instead I suggested we should protect the victims of their net zero religion, the thousands of high-skilled workers being sacked as industrial jobs move overseas. The pensioners and families shivering at home this winter as renewable levies push energy prices ever upwards. And of course, all of us in this room who will have to pay the multi-billion-pound cost of decarbonisation through higher and higher taxes. We all knew this Labour government would be awful. We perhaps didn't quite realise how awful it would be and how quickly the wheels would come off. But that gives us a huge opportunity to capitalise on Labour's collapse while people's minds are still all too aware that despite their rhetoric, returning the Conservatives to government is not the answer. As Zia said earlier, politics is so much about momentum. And if the polling, the by-elections and the membership surge tell us anything, it's that we have momentum in spades. But for us to form a government in 2029, something this country so badly needs, we as a party need to keep demonstrating that momentum, building on last year's successes at every opportunity. To win 4 million votes in July was a fantastic achievement, but it happened largely on the back of Richard's sterling work building the party's national infrastructure from scratch, followed by Nigel's insurgent explosion onto the media landscape. In military language, this was an air war, and no party conducted a better air war than Reform UK. But the single most important message from our national conference in September was that if we are to form a government in 4.5 years' time, we need to match the excellence of our air war with an equally impressive ground campaign. Everyone in this hall knows that the Liberal Democrats achieved 72 MPs on the back of a vote share that was smaller than Reform's. So to guide us in our ambition, as we seek to learn from what the Lib Dems do so well, I'd like to quote from a book that you won't see on Ed Miliband's bookcase anytime soon. In 1980, John Masters wrote a book called The Hunters, Searching for Oil and Gas in Western Canada. So why would I mention a book about oil and gas? Is it out of some dewy-eyed love for fossil fuels? Well, not exactly, although I'm proud to be part of the only mainstream party that backs real energy security for our country. Now, Masters' book was written in an era before the net zero lunacy that has led to the deindustrialisation of our country. I mention the book because of this quote. This is so simple, but it's amazing how few oil people really understand that you only find oil if you drill wells. You may think you're finding it when you're drawing maps and studying logs, but you have to drill. Masters wrote this because drilling for oil is hard, often resulting in failure, and it can sometimes feel futile. That's why it's all too easy to bury yourself in the displacement activity of poring over maps and logs when you need to be out there, persisting with drilling. So the same is true of political campaigning. You have to drill. What does drilling look like for Reform UK? It means building our branches. It means appointing officers. It means identifying candidates and activists. It means having branch meetings. In campaigning terms, it means delivering leaflets, knocking on doors and holding street stalls. Let me say it again, you have to drill. To drill means spreading the word to those that voted for another party or didn't vote at all. It means to take on casework, to listen to voters, to understand their concerns and make them feel heard. To drill means to campaign on our national message, but also to identify local issues, take those up and show residents you're on their side. In November, Donald Trump caused a political earthquake that should inspire us all. Against the political and business establishment, against the mainstream media, against the celebrity class, against the weaponised justice system, and against the pundits and the pollsters, he showed what can be achieved when real leadership stands up for ordinary people. And that is the scale of the opportunity we now have to reshape British politics, but it's also the scale of the challenge. So here, in the South East, we have a fantastic team that needs your help. From Winchester to Woking, from Banbury to Bognor Regis, from Leatherhead to Lewis, every leaflet matters, every door knock matters, and come 2029, every vote and every constituency will matter, and then, together, we can change politics for good. Thank you. It gives me enormous pleasure to introduce one of our star candidates from the general election. A couple of years ago, Myron joined Reform UK after hearing about our common sense approach to tackling the key problems facing our country, and how we want to recreate an economy and society where hard work and determination are rewarded. Since then, he stood twice for council and, of course, in the general election for Epsom and Ewell. Away from politics, Myron has huge experience working in the NHS through his background in dentistry, but above all, he's a passionate patriot who wants to serve our country. Ladies and gentlemen, Myron Senthil Nathan.
Ladies and gentlemen, so I broadly think there are two ways in which you can live life. You can either keep your head down and have a comfortable living, or you can put your head above the parapet because you realise that life is about living a higher purpose. It's about sacrificing, committing to a higher purpose. I believe Nigel Farage, when he came out of the good life of semi-retirement and took on the burden of leading reform, the challenge, the abuse of leading reform, I believe he did that for a higher purpose. I believe Richard Tice, who valiantly kept the party going for years and then humbly stepped down as soon as Nigel came back, I believe he did that for a higher purpose. And I believe the candidates who have also put their head above the parapet and stood for reform believe in a higher purpose. I believe the branch managers, the members, those who are handing out leaflets, all of us believe in a higher purpose. And I think fundamentally, from the grassroots to the HQ, reform stands for a higher purpose. It stands for something more than ourselves. It stands to resurrect the glory of this country. Because for too long, for decades, we have suffered from a democratic deficit. Tony Blair's constitutional reforms. Nobody really voted for net zero. Nobody voted for mass immigration. Nobody voted for the lockdowns. And recently, Surrey County Council have also postponed our May elections, seemingly. It looks like it. You know, I've often been saying Britain is exiting the first world and entering into a banana republic situation. And the councillor, Tim Oliver, he's quoted as saying that he owes the Surrey residents the best deal possible for devolution. But I say to him, he owes the Surrey residents a democratic vote. Democracy delayed is democracy denied. The thing to understand is this. It's an unpopular opinion, but I think the Labour Party, the Labour government, is a necessary catastrophe to show once and for all that the establishment parties cannot offer any solutions. They are the final nail in the coffin. The Conservative Party have proved themselves as the party of managed decline. The Labour Party have proved themselves as the party of active decline. And there's no escaping this decline. If you're not far from here in Frimley, a hotel turned into a migrant hotel. Young, undocumented men thrust upon a community. Even a few months ago, my own house got burgled. Around 48 hours later, a police officer arrives, looks around, gives me some words of sympathy, gives me a little registration number, and then goes home. He knows he's not going to catch the criminal. I know he's not going to catch the criminal. The criminals know they're not going to be caught. That is British life today in 2025. People are starting to join the dots that the Uni Party is finished. You know, yes, I agree, 100%. 100%. We've become a dictatorship. You know, Patrick O'Flynn tweeted the other day, he said, every week since July has been the worst week for the Labour Party. Right? And it feels like that. They're bundling on from one disaster to another. Do you know why? Because there's fundamentally a hardware problem with the Labour Party. You can't just tweak their policies. There's a hardware problem. They are a socialist authoritarian government that worships the public sector. They're never going to find any solutions to this country. And the Conservative Party are two souls trapped in one body, right? That's why under stress they'll never make any right decisions. They'll always break apart. Kemi Badenoch says we're going to work out our first principles. Let me translate that for you. That means we don't know who we are, we don't know what we stand for, and we don't know what we're going to do. All of us here at Reform, we know why we're here. The DNA of Reform stands for the British citizen first, the global citizen second. It stands for a love, a sense of gratitude, a sense of belonging for this land and our inherited history. It stands for strong borders. It stands for slashing net zero subsidies so we can free up cheap energy, so we can have a low-tax, high-growth economy, and we can obliterate identity politics once and for all. The thing is at Reform, all of us here, we know who we are, and that's why we have clarity. And if you have clarity, you have strength. And that's what the country desperately needs, strength. And we've seen how this strength has been translated into action. Just look at what's happened with the 5 MPs that we've had in Parliament. When we had the Manchester airport incident, we organised a private prosecutor. When the Labour Party shamelessly voted against a national inquiry, Nigel pledged that we would fund our own national inquiry to get justice for our girls and daughters. Look at Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe has been hammering the Department of Work and Pensions to get transparent data. Richard Tice relentlessly asking questions, trying to save our steel industry in Parliament. Zia Youssef working relentlessly to establish grassroots branches across the nation. We are a party of action, and that's what we should be proud of. But it's not just action, it's also language. Language is important. George Orwell said that bad actors always hide behind vague language. Does that remind you of anyone? Keir Starmer uses the word far right, he uses the word working people, he uses words like Islamophobia. He doesn't know what that means, we don't know what that means, no one knows what these words mean. These words are fig leaves to cover his incompetence and his corruption and his deviousness. When the front bench of the Labour Party are asked, what is a woman, the most fundamental question, they can't answer. But look, that isn't just a gotcha culture war question. If you can't answer what is a woman, it means either you're ideologically possessed, so you can't even see reality, or you're enslaved to people behind you who are ideologically possessed, and you're too cowardly to call out reality. Right? That is the problem with the Labour Party. They always put ideology first, pragmatism second. That is why whatever they touch fails. Whether it's the economy. Just ask Rachel, she's in China. Our Rachel, who identifies as an economist. That one, yeah. Ask her. The economy, energy, justice, education, it all falls apart because they always put ideology first, pragmatism second. And that's why this country is being driven off a cliff. Do you know what? The British public are just yearning for one thing, common sense. That's it. It's very simple. People label Reform as radical, as populist, but the reality is Reform is just sane. We are just sane. We have a sane vision for this country. We have sane policies for this country. It's very, very clear. But let me tell you, the general election is coming quicker than we think. My personal opinion is this. I don't believe Rachel Reeves is going to last very long. I don't think Keir Starmer, in my opinion, will last until the end of the year. It's my honest opinion. Right? But I tell you this general election is a special general election. It's a critical one. It is the last general election we have to save this country. Our economy has been battered. Our culture has been decimated. Britain is about to take its last gasp of air. This is critical. This is a democratic emergency. Jordan Peterson said very recently, he said, it's so sad to look over at the United Kingdom and see the mess that they've got themselves into. He said, I pray that you get your act together. It will be a shame to lose you, he said. Reform is here to make sure that does not happen. Understand. All of us, this is a once-in-a-century situation we're going to have in the next general election, and we're here to make history. Do not underestimate what you are doing when you're handing out leaflets, when you're campaigning. We are making history, make no mistake. This party, as I said, is beyond all of us. It's for a higher purpose, and let me tell you what that higher purpose is. It is to resurrect the soul of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Myron. So now we move on to Kent, which is an area that is full of promise for Reform UK. In the general election, our next speaker, Thomas Mallon, won nearly a quarter of all the votes cast in Chatham and Aylesford, a constituency which has now become a three-way marginal. The latest polling projections, however, show Reform UK in a very strong position to gain it next time around, and that's what I know Thomas will be working very, very hard towards. But in November, however, Tom went one better, gaining our first ever seat on Kent County Council in a by-election on a massive swing. Now, I'm sure the prospect of replicating Tom's success across the county has absolutely nothing to do with Kent's request to cancel their elections. Ho, ho. Anyway, without further ado, let's bring him up. Tom Mallon, onto the stage, please.
Hello, conference. How are we? This is actually my first speaking at a conference this size, and there's so many people here, so I'm glad to see the room's full. It's absolutely fantastic. It's so great to be in a room this size with such like-minded people like myself. It's very rare these days, must I say. I never actually heard what Alex was saying, but let me introduce myself. I'm Thomas Mallon. I'm actually branch chair for Chatham and Aylesford, and I've just recently been elected as the first ever Kent County Councillor for Reform UK. You might have noticed there's a little bit of an accent thing going on here. So just to let you know, if you kind of tune into a little bit of a Billy Connolly or maybe a Kevin Bridges kind of accent, will be good. So just to let you know, I've been in Kent for 27 years, so I've actually been in Kent a lot longer than I've actually lived in Scotland. So this is actually my new adopted home, and I really do love the Garden of England. It is one of the most beautifulest counties you'd ever see. So I came down here as a builder. I worked in the building trade. I worked in places like Bluewater, Darren Valley Hospital, and I worked at Glaxo Wellcomes in Dartford. I don't know if many of you know that, in Kent there. So I've always got in and about things. I've always been a grafter. I've always wanted to get in and do things. I've always had an interest in politics, you see. I studied politics at school, got an NVQ, and when I came out of building trade, I got into the warehousing game. And then decided about 2 years ago to join Reform UK, and here I am now. I'm standing right here in front of you lovely people. But I just want to say one thing. You see us people up here on the stage and you think these are the guys that drive this machine, this Reform UK machine. But I just want to say there's a whole back room of staff round there. People from headquarters, people that build this stage, people that are involved in logistics, organising memberships, organising things that people don't see. And I just want you to give them, please, a round of applause for all their hard work. But let's talk about volunteers. Because there's a lot of people behind the scene that do volunteer their time, and there's a lot of volunteers for Reform UK, and that's how we tick. It's the volunteers that keep this organisation going. It's the volunteers that come out Saturdays, Sundays, evenings, weekends, putting leaflets through doors, telling people about the message that we've got to deliver. These are the people that make us tick. And can I just say, from a show of hands, how many people have done campaigning? Leaflets, anything like that? Even if you're on Facebook, sharing messages, anything like that? Now, you are the 100%, you are the real people that make this place tick. You are the people that make Reform UK work. Give yourselves a round of applause, honestly. So, as I say, you guys are the real heroes. You guys that volunteer your time to help people like myself be spokespeople for my Chatham and Aylesford constituency, or even my Kent constituency as a councillor. It's you people that make that happen. So I thank you personally. Now, I was lucky enough, my campaign team that I worked with in Kent, in my opinion, they were the best campaign team in the whole of Kent that I could have got. We had Chris, we had Colin, we had the two Ryans, we had Benjamin, and we had an army of supporters, like a people's army that I can see sitting right here in front of me right now. And we were knocking on doors tirelessly, week in, week out, and we got the job done. And that's what it takes. It takes real dedication and real commitment. And that's how we're going to win the next general election, by dedication and commitment by people like you. Now, just to drop a little plug note there, there's actually 2 by-elections going on in Rochester right now. So if anyone here from Kent can help out in a Rochester by-election, there's a stand at the back, and surely someone will help you and you can come and help. So thank you again. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've actually noticed there's a buzz, there's an energy. When you go around high streets, you go around the town, there's a buzz, even when you're knocking on doors, putting leaflets through doors, or even holding a street stall in the middle of a town centre. You'll have people coming up going, "Thank goodness you're here. Thank you so much." It's like they're so grateful to see us. I mean, myself and my wife, we were out campaigning in Chatham, and we were putting leaflets through letter boxes, walking down gardens, putting the letters through the letter. There we go, in there. And then we walked away from a house, and someone's come running out, excuse me, waving the leaflet, and I'm going, looked at my wife, and she looked at me and thought, and she went, thank you so much. And that is the gratitude we get out there on the doorsteps now. It's absolutely fantastic. So, where are we? Yeah, so in Chatham and Aylesford, I don't know if Alex mentioned it, we got 24.5% of the vote in Chatham and Aylesford. We came third, but we're only 3,000 behind Labour, who won the seat. But I think, as Alex said, if we had the general election tomorrow, we would actually win Chatham and Aylesford. We would actually have 50 more seats. Now, to me, I say that is down to people power. It's down to Nigel and it's down to Zaya for turning this organisation and heading it in the right direction, because we are moving in the right direction with branch structures all over the country now, and we're getting more professionalised, we're getting more media coverage, which is fantastic, and that's what we need, because if we want Nigel as PM, we need to go out and work hard for that, and that's what we're going to do. Right, so that election was about 6 months ago. A lot's happened since then. I know for a fact my wife, she keeps an eye on the little counter for how many memberships we've got. Have you seen that? It's absolutely fantastic. She would check it on a daily basis with monotonous regularity just to see if we'd beat the Tories yet. And the day we beat the Tories, she was dancing about the house. God bless her. Yeah, but as I say, she keeps an eye now. There's an app out there that's called the Election Polling App, and it can tell what the polling would be and what would happen if a general election was called tomorrow and who would win that seat. So it's quite handy to look at, because a lot of Kent is turning turquoise, by the way. A lot of Kent is turning turquoise. And talking about the membership counter, we are still the fastest growing party in the UK, possibly even Europe. I don't know the facts on that, but I would say we would be. So we are still going strong. So some people might ask, What do reforms stand for? Well, that's quite easy, really, isn't it? Because we stand for family, community and country, in that order. Family first, then the community. Being a Kent County Councillor now, you have to see the community spirit in people, and you have to keep those communities going, because what we're getting at this moment in time is a government that's trying to shut down pubs, it's trying to shut down community centres, and it's trying to take the community spirit away from towns and villages all over the south-east of England. And that is so they control us. That is just pure control, and we can't let that happen. We have to keep the pubs open, we have to keep the community centres open for the local residents, and we've got to keep pursuing the very fabric that keeps the communities together, and that's what we're going to do, and that's what I'm going to try and do for Kent County Council. So right now, at this moment in time, we've got an energy bill crisis. Energy bills keep going up and up and up. We've got failing GP systems, we've got failing schools, we've got a failing NHS, we've got a failing economy, we've got failing borders, and if you ask me, we've just had 20 years of failing governments. So what are we going to do about this, ladies and gentlemen? Right in front of me, I see the People's Army. I say we get out and tell as many people as possible about Reform UK. We are the only future this country has. If we want to save this country, ladies and gentlemen, we need to get Nigel Farage as Prime Minister in 4 years' time. That's the only way we're going to save this country. There is no other way about it. We need to get out, start putting leaflets through people's doors, start getting organised. And ladies and gentlemen, that's how we save this country. A better future for you, for me, for our kids and for our grandkids. We need Nigel as PM. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom. An inspiration to all of us about how we do grassroots campaigning, and that's how we get the results. And ultimately, as Tom said, that's how we'll get Nigel into Downing Street. We're going to have a short break now. If we can try and be back in our seats for about 7:20, and then more speeches to come, more excitement. But yeah, go and get yourself a drink or coffee or whatever, and I'll see you back at 20:00. Thank you very much. Welcome back. If you could all take your seats, and we're now going to kick off the second half of this evening's proceedings. So I'm really very pleased indeed to be able to invite our next speaker to the stage. Those of you that know me well will know that apart from when I'm doing my best to wind up Sadiq Khan, I'm never happier than when I'm looking at election-related spreadsheets and graphs. And my first contact with Matt last year was to email him asking for copies of the full tables from some of his polling. So I've been fascinated for a long time by Matt's work, both as an academic and as a commentator. And I'm delighted he now has his own show on GB News, State of the Nation. I think with Matt, a combination of detailed knowledge and passion is something that we can all enjoy. So from one stats geek to another, come on up, Matt.
Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. Good evening. What a week in British politics. And I say that every week, but this really was an amazing week in British politics for the People's Army. For the first time in British political history, this movement is number one in the national opinion polls. Huge. Massive. If you look at that poll that came out this week, that gives Reform 150 seats at the next general election. And it's not difficult. It's not difficult to see why. If you ask Reform Party voters, and I've asked them in surveys, why are you voting for the Reform Party? The top reason: we want to control our borders. We want to regain control of our broken borders. We don't want people breaking the law. We don't want people taking advantage of the British people. Small boats up 25% on last year. They're costing the taxpayer, you, £5.4 billion every year. 5.4 billion. And we just took winter fuel payments off pensioners, off Britain's pensioners, to save 1.5 billion. It's absolutely bonkers, absolutely insane. We need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. We need to leave the ECHR. We need to reform the Human Rights Act. We need an active deterrent, and we need to do whatever is necessary to control our borders. The second reason people are voting for reform is to lower the overall level of legal immigration, which is also completely out of control. Everybody in London, everybody in the establishment will tell you immigration is good for Britain. But the numbers don't add up, because what we've got now is an extreme policy of low wage, low skill, non-European migration that even a government department concedes is taking more out of the national economy than it's putting in. But the establishment is like a drug addict. It's addicted to cheap migrant labour that is undermining, not feeding, our national prosperity. It's crazy. It has to stop. And, you know, over the last week, we were reminded as to why we should be concerned about the issue of immigration. Because I don't know about you, but I've been absolutely outraged and horrified by what the establishment will call the grooming gang scandal, what I call the rape gang scandal, because that's exactly what it was. Absolutely horrifying. According to Sarah Champion, Labour MP, when she used to sound reasonable, she estimates about 1 million working-class girls from the 1970s onwards in towns London's not really heard of and doesn't really care about, have been raped, abused and harassed by Pakistani Muslim gangs. And what made it even worse is that the people in power, and let's be frank, many people in the Labour Party, in Labour-run councils, look the other way. They look the other way. And we need to remind ourselves, we're not talking about a historic scandal. We are talking about something that is still going on today, which is what makes it even more outrageous. For the last 10 days, millions of people in this country and millions of people around the world have been asking themselves the same question. How on earth did any civilized society allow this to happen? We want the truth. We want justice. We want a national inquiry. And I can tell you, I don't just want a national inquiry. If you rape our kids and you have dual nationality, like the Reform Party promised at the 24 general election, I want you thrown out of Britain. Because somewhere along the way, our leaders completely lost their moral compass. It's true. When I read this week about the rape gang ringleader, Kari Ralph, who's walking around Rochdale, delivering food, potentially to his victims, I can't remember a point in my lifetime when I felt as outraged as I did when I was reading that newspaper article, because these guys shouldn't be in the country. They should not be in the country. So I've written about this. I'm glad the Reform Party picked it up. We need to use the foreign aid budget, and we need to use our visa programs, and we need to start telling countries like Pakistan that if you don't take these guys back, we're going to start making life really difficult for you. And then I turn on the television and I see Keir Starmer. I see Keir Starmer casually referring to the millions of people in this country who want to know the truth, who are asking the right questions, who want to get these girls justice. I see Keir Starmer describe them as amplifying the far right. I've had enough of Keir Starmer. This guy is completely out of touch with the British people. He doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. Keir Starmer, if you're watching, I've got two statistics for you. The first, 76% of people in this country, according to YouGov last night, 76%, more than 3/4 of the British people, say they want a national inquiry. Seventy-seven percent agree with what I just said. Let's deport these guys out of the country. Are they far right? 3/4 of the country, are they far right? You see, the establishment would have you believe that if you're in the People's Army, you're a fringe minority. What they haven't realised is they're the fringe minority. Same story on immigration, by the way. This week, about 3/4 of the country say immigration into Britain has been too high. And the percentage who think immigration has been mostly good for Britain has now slumped to a record low of 18%. Just 18% are endorsing this project that is being jammed down our throats. So the next time they say you are part of a fringe minority, the next time they say you're part of the far right, remind them that actually this movement is speaking up for the forgotten majority in this country. Because if he's not calling everybody far right, he's trying to spin this story into a story about Jess Phillips. He's trying to spin this story into something about Elon Musk. We've got much of the mainstream media doing the same, trying to tell us actually this isn't about the mass rape, abuse and harassment of young white working class girls. This is about Elon Musk in America. Let me just say to the mainstream media, the legacy media, if you'd been doing your job, if you'd been pursuing truth in this country, we wouldn't need Elon Musk to point to this scandal. It's absolutely insane. Because the reality is, the rape gang scandal turns the left progressive worldview on its head. Because they want us to believe that minorities are good and the majority is bad. But actually, this time around, things are a little different. It's the Pakistani Muslim minority that has been abusing the majority. That's why you've not heard anything from Sadiq Khan. This guy usually cannot wait to jump on social media to give us lectures on all kinds of issues. Where is he now? I'd like to see him in one of these communities. I'd like to see him meeting with victims and survivors. But he's not there. What we've had over the last 20 years is a new religion among the elite class jammed down our throats. We all know the names George Floyd. We all know the name Stephen Lawrence. They led to systemic changes in police, in government. How many people out there know the name Lucy Lowe? How many people out there know the name Charlene Downs? How many people out there know the name Victoria Agoglia? Everybody in this country should know those names, because those girls were murdered by Pakistani rape gangs. And it's absolutely outrageous that those girls were thrown under the bus by the establishment over the last 30 years, and I'm sick of it. And he calls us far right. This is the guy. Let's just remind ourselves who Keir Starmer is. Okay, let's just remind ourselves who he is. This is the Prime Minister who calls much of the country far right, but who at the same time is clamping down on free speech in our society. The very first thing the Labour government did was dump a free speech law for the universities. They don't believe in free speech. They don't believe in protecting freedom of expression. They want it shut down. This guy calls everybody far right. Then his party back a new definition of Islamophobia, which includes talking about the rape gangs as an example of Islamophobia, the aim of which is to shut down serious debate and discussion and, yes, criticism of Islam and what's happening within British Muslim communities. This is a guy who blames everybody else for being far right, but who over the last 15 years, and now in government, is jamming woke ideology down our throats, including in our schools, trying to tell our kids that they should be ashamed of who they are, they should be ashamed that they come from these islands, that they should think of themselves as being racist, that they should apologise for their white privilege. The same guy who told us 99.9% of women don't have a penis. And we're supposed to be the radicals and the extremists. He can talk about radicals. And he can talk about extremists. Now he's shutting down local elections. Now he's denying us democracy, which, by the way, Keir Starmer likes to do, because this is a guy, don't forget, who said to everybody in this country in 2016, in 2017, in 2018 and 2019, I'm sorry everybody, you voted the wrong way. I'm going to force you to have another referendum at which you're going to be told to vote Remain. This guy's never been a Democrat. This guy's never believed in democracy. He's an authoritarian progressive. We can all see it. That is what the Labour Party has become. And it's absolutely outrageous. And I'll just say one other thing before I go, because I'm on a roll. And I'm really peed off. I'm really peed off. I am sick to the back teeth of watching Labour MPs on one television show after another complaining about foreign interference in British politics. Okay? I'm absolutely sick of it, because if you watched the debate last night on GB News with me and Barry Sherbert, what's his name? The guy who took money from China, that guy. Beijing Barry. Let me tell you, all these Labour MPs complaining about foreign interference. It wasn't that long ago the Labour Party was sending activists into America to campaign for Kamala Harris. And they're sitting around number 10 complaining about Elon Musk. It wasn't that long ago. Keir Starmer's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, the company he founded called the Centre for Countering Digital Hate, it wasn't that long ago they went over to America to have a conversation in secret with Democrats about how they could, and I quote, kill Elon Musk's Twitter. And I wonder why Elon Musk is a bit irritated with the Labour government. If you're complaining about foreign interference in British politics today, and you weren't complaining about Barack Obama coming into this country in 2016 and telling everybody to remain in the European Union, then you are a hypocrite. And you can complain about billionaires all you want, but if I'm looking at a photograph of Keir Starmer, Larry Fink and Bill Gates in number 10 Downing Street, again, I'm seeing a lot of double standards. A lot of double standards. But let me tell you, they're doing all this because they're panicking. They're on the ropes. They're all on the ropes, left and right, Tory, Labour. They can see it. We can see it. We can feel it. We can sense it. There's a revolution happening right now in this country. That's what you're seeing in the opinion polls. That's what you're seeing in the public debate. If the last 10 days have shown you anything, it's that the power of new media, of renegades, of disruptors to change the national conversation in this country, to change the debate in this country, to force votes in Parliament, that power is now enormous. We have an enormous amount of power. And it's only going to grow and grow. It's only going to grow and grow. What you saw in the opinion polls this week, this is the beginning. It's the beginning of a full-scale realignment in British politics. The Tories are dead. It's over. It's finished. Brand's gone. Brand's gone. Every Conservative MP I talk to is complaining about Kemi Badenoch. They know they're not in the conversation because we all remember what they did to the country when they were in power. And they sold us down the river. So what we're going to build is something different, and it's going to be enormous, and it's going to be massive, and it's going to be powerful, and it's going to change this country like nothing ever before, and it's going to give the British people what they deserve, which is respect, which is treating them with decency, which is saying we're not going to take this anymore, and we're going to start putting the British people, British workers, British families and British children at the front of the queue. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, they say you should never meet your heroes. Well, just shaking hands with Matt Goodwin just then, proving that absolutely wrong. What a legend, what a star. Thank you, Matt. Now, our penultimate speaker tonight is someone without whom none of us would be here today. There would be no Reform UK at all without this man's energy, commitment and generosity, keeping the show on the road in both good times and bad. On a personal level, it was Richard who welcomed me into the party with open arms when I was looking for a new political home after the Tories launched the most unwarranted assault on our individual liberties in lockdown. Since then, I've worked with him on all manner of campaigns. I've been his election agent twice, and I absolutely count him as not just a political colleague, but very much a true friend. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the Member of Parliament for Boston and Skegness and your Reform UK Deputy Leader, Richard Tice.
Yeah. We're all winners here. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? That's better. We're all winners here, folks. I have to be honest, unlike previous occasions when I've been here, Sandown Park is full of memories for me. Lots of memories. I spent lots of happy times with my late father here, with the horses, lots of giggles, and one or two dramas. He was brilliant at raising money for a fantastic cancer charity here every year. But I have to be honest with you, folks, I've got a few skeletons. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, you see, it's the sign of a misspent youth, isn't it? You work hard and you play hard, and you think you're going to be the next genius at racing. Do you remember the old expression, how do you make a small fortune in horse racing? And the answer is start with a large one. And I must declare an interest because I had some financial investments. I had the odd ear, the odd tail, the odd leg of the odd nag. And a few of them ran here. I think some of them are still running. But we had a lot of fun. We really did. And goodness me, what a start to the year. Just another quiet week. I mean, where do we begin? Where do we begin, folks? 3 massive crises and scandals emerging upon us in just the first week of the year. We've got the grooming gang scandal. Only Reform UK saying, actually, if the government won't hold an independent national inquiry, then we will sort it. And you've heard from others, and you'll hear from Nigel on that. And then we've got an emerging serious financial crisis coming towards us. And yesterday, I spoke in the House of Commons about this in front of a Labour Party that seemed to think everything is fine. That seemed to think the bond markets stressing is just normal behaviour. I mean, where do we begin with this stuff? And then we've got an energy crisis, which I'll come back to shortly. Exactly a year ago, I launched a new word in the English language. I was sort of half joking. Starmageddon, I called it. But I mean, even I didn't think it would be this bad, folks. I mean, there's bad and there's seriously bad. This is off the chart. They've only been around 6 months. It feels like 6 years. And then, not wanting to be left out, there's our Rachel from accounts. I call her Reeves-ageddon now. I mean, the damage that our Rachel is causing to all of our wealth is truly, truly shocking. In what I now call the blunder budget of all budgets. Absolutely clueless. Taxes up, spending up, debt up, jobs down, confidence down, investment down. And the consequence of all of that, businesses are looking at their profit and loss and they're saying, well, we've either got to raise the prices or we've got to lay people off. And they said when they arrived that this was going to be all about growth and all about stability and fixing the foundations. Well, I used to be a house builder. Let me tell you, they have sabotaged the foundations of the British economy. There's no growth. And as I said yesterday to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, who doesn't seem to understand, the last 2 months of data in September and October, we're heading south. Growth is negative. How's that creating jobs? How's that creating wealth? It's not. And the bond markets, the 10-year and the 30-year bond yields, the price of the government raising debt for 10 or 30 years is the highest it's been for 15 years or more. This makes Liz Truss and Kwasi like a walk in the park. And yet you won't hear that on the BBC. Oh no, our friends at the BBC. Crikey, not many friends of them in here, are there? Actually, but we have got some friends, and we must always be grateful, because we couldn't have achieved what we've achieved at Reform without the likes of GB News and Talk TV, and I always want to thank them. And if we are not careful, folks, and I'm calling it out, if we don't change course, you cannot keep spending more than you're earning, at home, in your business, or as a country. Eventually, you run out of money and you go bust. And my concern is that's what the bond markets are now sensing. And they're saying, we want a higher price to lend to you, the British government. But if our Rachel's not enough, goodness me. There he is. What about our Ed? Red Ed Miliband. We might have a picture of him somewhere. I mean, you remember that film, A Nightmare on Elm Street? We've now got A Nightmare on Socialist Street. There's Rachel. She's with her scythe to jobs and investment. There's our Rachel. But not to be outdone, I think I've got another picture of our Ed. Red Ed, another nightmare on Socialist Street. Have we got Red Ed? There he is. Red Ed Miliband. This man, Rachel's the most dangerous woman to the British economy in the UK. And this man is the most dangerous man to the British economy. He's absolutely obsessed with the wretched, dangerous net zero. Now that does deserve a boo, because I tell you what, net zero is the greatest act of financial self-harm ever imposed on a nation by the Wallies in Westminster. And this is the moment. I want a bit more audience participation. So, how many of you speak German? Hands up. Anyone speak German? We're not a nation of linguists, are we? Crikey. Well, look, the honest answer is, sprechen Sie Deutsch? Nein. I don't speak much German either, but I want to learn one word tonight. And I want you to tell everybody about this one single word. I tried it in the House of Commons the other week. They didn't have an absolute Scooby-Doo of a clue what I was talking about. Dunkelflaut. Now, we're all going to practice this word, folks. I'm going to count you down from 3 down to 0, and then you're all going to say it. Dunkelflaut. 3, 2, 1. Dunkelflaut! Don't get technical, love. I'm going to tell you what it means. A Dunkelflaut is when there's no wind, there's no sun, there's low cloud, and it lasts for days. It's a German word, and we had one just before Christmas, and we're literally in the middle of one now. And the problem with that is when you've got a Dunkelflaut, and our Red Ed thinks it's a good idea to put all of your energy system on wind and solar, you're in the proper doo-doo when the wind doesn't blow and there's no sun, which is what a Dunkelflaut is. So remember that word, folks. I want that word to be on everybody's lips as you go back to the pub, tell your mates, teach them one word in German, Dunkelflaut, because that is the danger. We nearly had blackouts on Wednesday. The price of wholesale electricity on Wednesday, 2 days ago, was 5 times the average of the last year. And for the next few days, we're going to be in this Dunkelflaut. And the reality is that net zero means higher bills, it means a higher cost of living, it's killing jobs, it's killing our competitiveness, it's killing industries, it's doing its best to kill the steel industry, it's killing the auto industry. Those 1,100 jobs lost a couple of months ago at Luton in the auto industry, they would all still have their jobs if we hadn't gone down this ludicrous net zero madness. And we're the only party with the courage to tell it as it is. And that is the simple reality. And that's why all of the other parties, they are completely out to lunch. The Uni Party, they're in love with this. But the penny is dropping with people. I think people are working it out, not just here, but also in America. And you might ask, why is America's electricity and energy prices a third of ours? Because they use their own energy treasure. And we've got loads of this treasure, oil, gas, under our feet. But we've chosen not to use it. It's financial negligence of the gross, most enormous kind. We are deliberately making ourselves poorer. It's utter financial insanity. And it started with the Tories. It's funny, some of them, privately, they agree with us, but they can't yet quite come to terms with it because they legislated for it. They actually put it in law. There's only 7 countries, I think, who've actually put this in law. Other countries can't believe their luck. As they sell us their electricity, they sell us their gas. We're buying gas from America that's brought over in these big ships with these golf balls on top. You create way more CO2 doing that. Sending them our jobs, sending them our money, making us poorer. They're laughing all the way to the bank. They cannot believe our naive stupidity. And the gentleman there, a lot of people think that CO2 is a poison. Thank God for CO2. Without CO2, there's no photosynthesis, there's no plants, we all die. But you see, if you don't understand something, follow the money. And there's too much money being made by the vested interests. That is the reality. So the news, folks, currently is bad. But we are the party of hope. We are the party of momentum. We're the party of energy. And we are the party of optimists. And we've got so much growth happening at the moment. And we have to be optimistic. So having given you the bad news, I have got some good news. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You see, it's only 4 years to the next general election. But we're a patient lot, but there's plenty to do in the interim. We've got local elections in some places this year. Although it seems that some of the councils, because of our progress, are now bottling it, and they're sort of delaying it until next year. That's fine. Whenever the elections are, we'll be ready, and we are going to surprise everybody. We're going to win and win and win. And we need you to be brave, put your head above the parapet and stand for us, please. And next year, the Welsh and the Scottish elections, we're going to do some amazing things. We are going to shock the establishment in the United Kingdom. I can feel it, I can sense it, and I think you can too. And that's what we've got to go for, to create that sense of momentum, that sense of confidence, that sense of belief. Because the great thing is, we know we're right. We know that we are right. And I took a bit of flack during the general election when they looked at, our sort of the economics in our contract, and they gave me a hard time. They said you can't save £5 in 100 from public sector spending. Well, let me tell you, from what I've learned so far, and the whistleblowers that have come to us, I reckon I was understating it. I mean, the waste, the abuse of public funds, and I'm afraid to say the corruption is off the dial. Completely off the dial. And so having given me a hard time a few months ago, the Labour Party now agree with me. Darren Jones, the Chief Secretary, basically, he wrote to everybody and he said, you've got to save £5 in 100. Well, I think I've heard that somewhere before. Brackets, Tice is right, close brackets. And on net zero, I said, we could save 30 billion quid a year by scrapping the wretched thing. And they said, no, you couldn't. The Department for Net Zero said, we don't recognise that figure. That civil service ... I nearly swore there, he's close to the number, he may not be bang on it. That's the reality. And then the National Grid comes out and says, it's not 30 billion a year, it's 40 billion a year. So once again, I was undercooking it. Scrap it and you save all that. And then we don't have to build thousands of ugly, hideous pylons that would blight my constituency of Boston and Skegness and dozens of other constituencies up and down the country. We don't want it, we don't need it. So on this stuff, we've been proven right. And then I said you don't need to pay £30 billion a year on voluntary interest on all the money that the Bank of England printed. And then economists from the Financial Times and the Sunday Times and the Economist, even Robert Peston. Dear old Robert, we love him. Even they looked at it, they scratched their head and they said, bother, Tice is right. So we know what we're doing about this stuff. We can save serious money, and we're going to have to, because we have got a serious financial deficit. So we know what we're doing. We know we can make this work, but we need everybody's help. This is a journey. It's not easy. No one said it is, but we are trying to have some fun. Are you having fun? Yeah. Are you having, a bit cautious, are you having fun? Yeah. Thank God for that. We have to have some fun along the way, but it does help that we know we're right. And we believe, I believe, and I think you believe, that we can turn this round. A bad boss can ruin a good business in 2 years. But a good boss, the right leaders, the right managers, can turn round a business in 2 to 3 years. And that, folks, is what we grasp. That's what we hang our belief on, our confidence on. We know that our policies are the right policies, that our values are the right values. And if we do that, and we win these elections, and we make Nigel Farage the next Prime Minister of this great country of ours, I promise you, I absolutely promise you, folks, we can make this country grow again, and yes, we can make Britain great again. Thank you, thank you!
I now call the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage.
We are the new kids on the block. We have no experience in this Parliament whatsoever, even though some of us have tried many times over the years previously to get here. So we can't judge you from working in this place, but we can judge you from the way the outside world sees you.
Believe me, folks, this is just the first step of something that is going to stun all of you. Thank you very much.
Nobody on the front bench has ever worked in private business. Nobody on the front bench understands what genuine risk capital is. Hard work is the only way anybody succeeds individually. And hard work is the only way we're going to have a chance as a country to turn any of this around. We are in much deeper trouble than anybody on either front bench dares to admit. You know, for a Labour Party that couldn't define what a woman was, couldn't define what a working person was, well, after today I'm pretty convinced they can't define what economic growth is.
We believe that a society looks after its weak, but encourages everybody else to do the very best it can. We don't care about skin colour, we don't care about orientation, we care whether you share the values of this country. We care whether you obey the law, and we'll judge you on who you are. We'll judge you on who you are as a person. Isn't this what everybody wants? Is that what we're going to fight for? Can we make history? Are you going to be part of it? Thank you very, very much indeed. You know, I booked a series of these events, 4 of them in the first couple of weeks of the year, and every single one of them was sold out, oversubscribed within 48 hours. We could have filled this room 3 times over. But those that couldn't get tickets aren't missing out, because what we're doing with these is we're live streaming them on all of our platforms, including one called X. And you know, we have good days and bad days in our relationship, but that's the way it is. But we live stream these events, and you know, last Friday evening we were in Leicester, and watching through the party's accounts, my accounts, on Facebook, on X, TikTok and elsewhere. It wasn't just 1,000 people in the room. 900,000 people watched our event last Friday. And I know there are many of you sitting at home right now watching this, and you've seen the speeches that have come before. And I'm talking to you right now. These people in this room are all paid up members of Reform UK. But I know that most of you watching this at home believe in what we're trying to do, want this country to be saved. You've not yet joined the party. So please go on to the Reform UK website and join the People's Army, and do it right now. And talking of that, have you all seen the live membership ticker? And hey, we're through 179,000 and we're going strong. And I tell you what, there's real momentum, there's real buzz, there's real energy. This party is going places. Westminster doesn't know what is going to hit it, believe me. Now, I called these meetings with a very specific purpose. We're in Surrey and here in this county and next door in Kent and just down the road in East and West Sussex and elsewhere. On the 1st of May this year, there were the county council elections. They posed a massive opportunity for this party, and frankly, myself and Zia are really excellent chairman of the party, who I'm proud to work alongside, who you heard from earlier. And we really have spent the last 5 months trying to get the branches opened, trying to get the candidates to come forward to be vetted, getting them in position. We have been putting everything into fighting these county council elections up and down the length and breadth of England. But the Labour Party want to change local government. They want to get rid of county councils. They want to destroy the idea of county identity. And personally, I think county identity matters a great deal. I really do. They want to abolish district councils, which means that the smaller rural areas will get dominated by the bigger urban areas. And then above all of that, they want to have mayors for all of the counties. And whenever you have a referendum on this, the people say, no, we don't want it. None of this was in the Labour manifesto, but this apparently is what they're going to do. And that has given the Conservatives, who are in charge of these counties, the opportunity to apply for a delay. And would you believe that Kent and Surrey and East Sussex and West Sussex, all the counties in this area, a total of 14 county councils and 2 other councils, have applied to the government to have their elections delayed. And I called this meeting to get people here, to get us ready and organised for May the 1st. I thought only dictators cancelled elections. And yet what we see, frankly, from the Conservatives, they know that reform are coming for them. What they have done today is an act of political cowardice. It is denying people their democratic rights, and frankly, I'm angry. I think the whole thing is a complete and utter disgrace. I really do. But we must not, in these counties here, allow what they've done to stop or quell our momentum in any way. We've got to go on building branches. We've got to go on getting candidates out in the field. We've got to go on putting leaflets through doors. We've got to go on building data. We've got to go on being engaged and involved in local issues and with local media. Do you know something? When these elections do finally come, they'll be in for an even bigger shock, because we'll be bigger and better organised and stronger, and we'll get even more votes than we would have done on May the 1st this year. So we will not let them stop us in any way at all. I came back into politics on the 3rd of June this year, having had a short time out. I'd spent over 20 years in the European Parliament. I kind of set my life on getting us out of the European Union and getting back the independence and self-governance of this country. Everybody told me that it was impossible. Everybody told me that I was wasting my time. People thought I might be drinking too much. I don't know. But you know what? Through sheer guts and persistence, and through the backing of thousands of activists, we achieved that goal in 2020, and we did get back control of our country. And of course, the big part of that was to control our borders. Take back control of our borders. That's what Boris said, wasn't it? And in manifesto after manifesto, they promised us net migration would be reduced to tens of thousands a year. And in 2023, net migration was 1 million. I came back into politics because I felt every promise that had been made on the back of that referendum and on the back of that massive 80-seat majority, which in many ways I helped them get, had been betrayed at a level that, frankly, the Conservative Party should never, ever be forgiven for. Never. And I could see that we were in societal decline. I could see that we were in economic decline. And frankly, as bad as the Conservatives were, it seemed to me that Labour would be a little bit worse. Now, I got that wrong. They're a lot worse. But they're not really, are they? Because whether it's the net zero policies that Richard was talking to you about earlier, giving our industries the most expensive electricity in the world, closing down manufacturing in our countries, to the lunacy of what happened this Wednesday, when we weren't very far away from the lights going out, because we rely on wind energy. And sometimes the wind doesn't blow. In fact, the wind is not going to blow for the next 8 days. We're going to be reliant on importing electricity from Europe and from Norway. But when it's cold there, they want their own electricity. Because you see, there are countries in the world that put their own people first. Not us, obviously. And you can blame mad Ed Miliband for all of this, but who started it? It was Boris, but Theresa May above all. That piece of legislation that was pushed through was done by Theresa May. In reality, we've got a uni party. There isn't much to choose between them. And we are the radical alternative. We are the people that believe, even though this country is in deep and desperate decline, that with the right leadership, with the right belief, we can turn this round and we can get back some common sense in our lives and a country that once again understands you have to help business, not harm business. You have to encourage hard work. You have to applaud success and have a tax system that keeps your best and brightest people here paying taxes, without which we don't have a good education system, a national health service or a care service of any time. And we're that party. We have a positive vision. We can make this country far better than it is, and that is what we intend to do. But it's going to need a superhuman effort on behalf of all of us. And on that point of societal decline, we used to call them grooming gangs. But that term is too mild, isn't it? These are mass rape gangs. what has happened and the scale on which it's happened seems to be almost incalculable. Charlie Peters, the investigative reporter for GB News, oh, I'm pleased you like it. I tend to pop up on there occasionally. But Charlie now says he has documented evidence that mass rape has happened in at least 50 towns. And there's nothing new about it. It's been going on for decades. But because of the two-tier approach that we take in Britain, two-tier policing, two-tier justice, we treat some communities very differently to other communities. Better, it would seem, that poor young white girls suffer rather than expose the truth and offend a group, mercifully a small percentage, but a group of Pakistani males. That is what's happened. That is why social services turned a blind eye, why the police didn't prosecute. Who knows? Maybe this even goes as high as the Director of Public Prosecutions in his early days. I don't know. It also seems to me that the motivations for much of what happened were purely racist motivations. They keep calling us racist, but it looks like the truth is the boot was on the other foot. But we can speculate, but don't we deserve to know the full truth? Don't we deserve to know the extent of this across our country? Don't we deserve to know how long it's been going on? Don't we deserve to know how many of those young women have been abused? And don't we deserve, just as importantly, to find out who the guilty men and women are that perpetrated a cover-up for what I think is one of the greatest evils that has ever happened in our country. And Keir Starmer apparently doesn't want to have an inquiry. He says we've had one already. It's called the J Inquiry. It is 459 pages long. It barely touches on grooming gangs and mentions Rotherham just once. It's a whitewash as far as this is concerned. We know that 76% of the population want this inquiry and want the truth. And if Starmer won't do it, and I'll give him to the end of the month, if Starmer won't do it, I will raise the money and we will hold that full public inquiry. We will do it. We will do it. We will do it. The people deserve to know the truth. And I also talked about economic decline. Well, we're getting poorer. Funny thing, isn't it? The more immigration goes up, the poorer we become. It's truly incredible that of the last 2 million people that came into Britain under a Conservative government, those that came in from outside the European Union, of those 2 million, only 16% are working. Only 16% are earning and paying tax. The rest effectively become a burden on the state. We need some frank, plain speaking. And I say that as somebody and a party that I lead. We want no truck with extremism of any kind at all. We don't actually care what colour you are. We don't care what gender you are. We don't care what your sexual preferences are. In fact, we'd rather not know what they are. But we want to live in a country where everybody is equal and people are judged regardless of who they are or what they are, on how they behave and whether they share the values that the rest of us share. Let's have a society of genuine equals. Now, I've got to tell you, I've never been particularly impressed by Rachel Reeves. But my colleague Lee Anderson, I mean, Lee is funny. He really is funny. It was Lee in PMQs after it was revealed that, far from being some senior economist at the Bank of England, that Rachel has spent most of her time in personnel or whatever it may be. And Lee called her Rachel from accounts. Folks, I promise you, when it comes to handling the economy, they haven't got a clue. Not a clue. Not one person on that Labour front bench has ever worked in private business. Not one. And what they did in that budget, and in the weeks preceding it, they're going to pump more money into the public sector and hammer the private sector. They say they're a government about growth. I promise you, when we see the next figures, you'll find we're in recession already. And economics and money operates as much as anything on confidence. But look at Starmer and Reeves together. Does that inspire confidence? They're miserabilists. He even gave a speech, didn't he, Starmer, saying things can only get worse. Well, were you in charge? I agree with you. And the bond markets have woken up to this. Sterling is falling. We haven't quite yet reached the sort of panic that we had under Liz Truss. But Reeves is off in China at the moment, basically saying, please buy our bonds. And the next stop, who knows, those of greyer hairs will remember, it could even be the International Monetary Fund. We do not encourage small business. We do not encourage enterprise. We do not tell young people the right things about work, about life, about money. We need a complete change of culture in this country. We need to tell young people that actually the only way you succeed in life is, frankly, through damned hard work. Let's start telling people that. Let's stop knocking success. Let's stop looking down or trying to punish those that make money. That is how the world goes around. And I genuinely think that one thing that reform can bring is a mixture of people from all walks of life, but we will have in our top team people who have succeeded in setting up their own businesses, being entrepreneurs, taking risks, creating jobs, making money, paying taxes. And that's what we got to do to be a successful country, have the right economic leadership. And yes, let's bring back a bit of confidence. Now, it is the young that I'm going to go on talking about tonight, because I'm appalled at what they're being taught at school. I'm appalled they're being taught to be ashamed of this country, of its history, even of its great national figures. I'm sick of the poisoning of the minds of young people. But something remarkable is happening amongst the 16 to 30-year-olds. They're not talking in the same way as the millennials about work-life balance and what can the state do for me. I see a lot of young people who've got ambition, a lot of young people who are well turned out, a lot of young people who are rejecting the nonsense and the wokeism they're being taught at school, which is a good thing. and I'm thrilled. And talking of wokeism, God, I've enjoyed this. That Jaguar advert. Unbelievable. I mean, you're advertising a car with no cars. Just a bunch of weirdo-looking people walking through a door. And I saw this, and I put out across all the socials, I put out some comments saying, I've never seen such a load of nonsense in all my life, and I hope their sales go down. Well, the chief executive of Jaguar hit back, very angry at me, and said that I was not Jaguar's target audience. I would have thought with gin and Jags, I thought I was the perfect target audience for a Jaguar, but anyway, the good news is their sales figures came out yesterday, and in the last quarter they've fallen by over 25%. Go woke, go broke. That's got to be the message. And the same applies to my friends at National Westminster Bank as well. But this is the nonsense that is not just in the public sector, it's in the big corporate sector as well. And these are the things that we will stand up and fight back against. But on this theme of young people, we've now got young people joining this party. I've got 1 million followers now on TikTok, nearly all young people. And it's with young people, and the People's Army, you can all do your bit. And I hope you will all do your bit. But we need lots and lots of young legs, don't we, out there campaigning, helping us. We need that youth and energy. And I'm pleased tonight to introduce you to one or two of them. I'm going to begin with a man called Robin Hunter-Clark. He was, a few years ago, the youngest councillor in the country. Since then, he's gone on and qualified as a solicitor. And last year, he was one of the few Conservative gains in local elections that happened all over the country. But tonight, I'm not sure he's told the Conservative Party this yet, but tonight Robin Hunter-Clark joins me on stage because he is joining Reform UK.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Nigel. And Happy New Year to you all. What a year it's going to be, hey? It's an absolute pleasure to stand before you tonight as your newest councillor, and I've come all the way from Norfolk. So the authority I belong to is a district council called Breckland, for those of you that may know it. And so I'm very proud to stand here before you this evening, now representing Reform. Deciding to make this move was not an easy one. Life's big decisions rarely are. But in truth, this one was simpler than most. I've given the Conservative Party every opportunity to prove it could change, to rediscover a sense of purpose, integrity and moral direction. Time and time again, I hoped it would rise to that challenge. And yet every step of the way, both the party and many of its senior members have profoundly let me down and let us down. Ladies and gentlemen, much has been said recently about the Conservative Party dying, I'm here to report to you tonight that it is now dead. In fact, I checked for a pulse before I left it, and I can confirm it's not just dead, it's been embalmed, buried and forgotten. Now, yesterday I was at Norfolk County Council and I witnessed something truly shocking, and it's happened in other counties as well, this one here too, where both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party voted to cancel the upcoming county council election. Why, you may ask? Because they know that if we had an election, Reform would win it, and win it convincingly. They're cowards, the lot of them. I told them so yesterday, and that's why I stand here today. But if we've reached the point where elections are cancelled, as Nigel has just said, simply because those in power fear losing, then democracy really is under threat in this country. We must ask ourselves, what is the role of a political party in a democracy? It's to serve the people, to represent their hopes and concerns, and to stand up for their future. When a party becomes more interested in clinging to power than serving the public, it has lost its way. And that's exactly what I witnessed yesterday. Thank you. I want to pay a special tribute, you won't know her, but I want to pay a special tribute to her, to one Conservative councillor, a lady called Claire Bowes, who stood tall and principled against the tide in Norfolk. Her courage is admirable, and I hope in time she and others like her will join us. Because make no mistake, there are many decent, hard-working Conservatives who see the writing on the wall. Reform is the future, and I want to give them the confidence to join us in delivering it. This country is crying out for change. Every corner of our nation demands reform. Our economy, our public services, our health system, every institution that has been neglected for far too long. Let's take our NHS as just one example. For years we've heard politicians promise change, pledge billions and roll out headline-grabbing policies, yet nothing has improved for patients or staff. Reform means tackling the root causes of inefficiency and waste. It means empowering local leaders and frontline workers instead of piling on bureaucracy. Our education system, too, needs a serious overhaul. Every child in this country deserves access to a high-quality education that prepares them for the challenges of the modern world. That doesn't mean tinkering with targets or exam structures. It means bold, forward-thinking reforms that put the needs of children and their future at the heart of every decision. And let's not forget the urgent need to address the state of our economy. The small businesses that form the backbone of our communities are being crushed under the weight of taxes and regulations. Reform is about unleashing the potential of every entrepreneur, every worker, and every industry to create prosperity for all. A year ago, perhaps even a few months ago, if someone had said that Nigel Farage had a shot at becoming Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, people would have laughed, wouldn't they? Well, they're not laughing now.
I think we know that one, don't we?
The opinion polls are clear. The momentum is real. Reform UK is giving voice to millions of people who have felt ignored, forgotten, or taken for granted for far too long. But let me be clear, this isn't just about winning elections. It's about restoring trust in politics. It's about showing people that government can be honest, transparent and accountable. It's about building a movement that puts the British people first and delivers the change they desperately need. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honoured to be here tonight, standing alongside all of you. Together we have a chance to shape the future of this great nation. Let's seize it with both hands. Thank you for your time and your warm welcome. Onwards and upwards.
Thank you, Robin. Now, sticking with the youth theme, but coming closer to home, we are in Elmbridge. And the youngest councillor on Elmbridge Councillor, who was in his time, believe it or not, the youngest councillor in the country, is Harrison Allman Varty. And Harrison, come up here. I think you actually were elected, weren't you? The count happened in this hall. So Harrison, serving Conservative councillor for this district, but that might be about to change, mightn't it? Let us know.
Good evening, Team Reform UK. There's a lot more of you from this angle. My name is Harrison Allman Varty, and I'm a councillor for Elmbridge Borough Council, and it's an incredible opportunity to stand before you tonight at Reform South East Conference. And I stand before you as a defector, not only as a member from the Conservative Party, but as a councillor. First of all, I'd like to take a moment to thank my new partner in politics, Richard Hunt, whose belief in our cause is the reason why I'm stood here today, and to my political hero, Nigel Farage. You've inspired me, challenged the establishment, and fought battles most wouldn't dare, and to now stand on the same side as you is honestly surreal. And if I may, just to take a moment to talk about Nigel. Look around you. There's only one man responsible for all of this. And can you name any other politician in this country who could inspire such energy, such passion, and such unwavering enthusiasm? A sold-out event filled to the brim in less than 48 hours, and that doesn't just happen by chance. It happens because we have a leader who speaks directly to the people, who defies the odds, and who fights battles that most would shy away from. Nigel Farage isn't just a leader, he's a movement, and there is no greater political figure in this country today, and we and his members are forever indebted to him. Now, after 8 years as a member of the Conservative Party and as the UK's youngest elected councillor in 2022, I've been on a political journey that mirrors what so many in the home counties are experiencing today. Just a couple of years ago, I was out on the campaign trail knocking doors alongside Dominic Raab, posting leaflets with Theresa May, and shaking hands with Rishi Sunak. Like so many others, I was loyal to the Conservatives, not out of blind allegiance, but because I believed that they were the only party that represented the values of hard work, enterprise and tradition. But over time, I saw firsthand the cracks forming, their inability to deliver on promises, the lack of vision and the repeated betrayals of the people they claim to serve. And the truth is, many voters in the home counties have felt politically homeless for years. They've watched as the Conservative Party has drifted further from their values, leaving them frustrated and disillusioned. But now, Reform UK is giving them something that they've been craving for too long, a real alternative. And in areas like this, we respect people who achieve things, those who work hard, take risks and build success. Figures like Richard Tice, Zia Yusuf and Nick Candy embody the values that resonate so deeply here. And Reform UK understands what the Conservatives have forgotten, that leadership isn't about empty slogans, it's about action. And Reform UK has proven that we're not just an alternative, we're the choice for those who refuse to settle for anything less than better. Now, this defection does come with some personal consequences. Now, it's not exactly fashionable to be a straight, white, privately educated English male, let alone a Reform councillor. One application I had to fill out the other day even asked if I'd undergone gender reassignment surgery. But here's the thing. It doesn't matter anymore. Why? Because Reform UK is no longer a party of the fringe. We are the future. We're the mainstream, the tide has turned, and people are finally waking up to the fact that politics as usual is no longer working. Here in Elmbridge, we're not just your average community. We're home to some of the UK's top taxpayers. 10 years ago, the 130,000 residents of Elmbridge impressively contributed double the amount of income tax of Cardiff and Newcastle combined. Yes. And for what? Most residents in Elmbridge rely on private healthcare and private education. We're a community that gives the most and takes the least. And it's the parallel story of overburdened taxpayers up and down the country. Reform UK is the only party bold enough to stand up and fight for value for money, not just for taxpayers in Elmbridge, but for hard-working families in every corner of Britain. The harm to small business has been devastating, and the Conservatives call themselves the party of enterprise, but their actions tell a very different story. By freezing income tax brackets, hiking corporation tax, and failing to deliver Brexit properly, they've suffocated the very entrepreneurs they claim to champion. Instead of unleashing Britain's entrepreneurial spirit, they've stifled it. The South East, the powerhouse of capitalist initiative, is the only area, along with London, that contribute more to the exchequer than they take out. Yet instead of celebrating this, instead of empowering those who drive our economy, government punishes them. For it's the visionaries, the innovators, the dreamers who drive this country forward. It's the risk-takers that haul the gracious return, not only for their own gain, but for the betterment of the entire nation. The people who don't just build businesses, but build Britain itself. Now, finally, as part of Reform UK, I'm eager to help build our presence in communities like this, the home counties. Once steadfast in their loyalty to the Conservatives, are now disillusioned by broken promises and endless failures. Reform UK offers these voters a fresh start, an opportunity to be the voice of reason, the voice of action, and above all, the voice of hope. And I stand before you tonight not just as a defector, but as a believer. I believe in the vision, the energy and determination of Reform UK. I believe in our ability to reshape the political landscape of this country. And I believe with every fibre of my being that if we maintain this momentum, Nigel Farage will be the next Prime Minister of this great nation. Together, we can reshape the political landscape of this country. We can turn disillusionment into determination, frustration into action, and hope into reality. And finally, remind people that there is an alternative, proving to the nation that Reform UK isn't just the party of the future, it's the party of right now. Thank you very much.
Indeed, we got lots of great young people. So we've had somebody who was the youngest councillor in the country a few years ago, somebody who was the youngest councillor in the country until recently. Well, that's until there was a by-election in Milton Regis in Kent a few weeks ago, and Reform put up a candidate who was 18 years old. His name is Kieran Mishuk. And guess what? He won, and here he is. He's the youngest councillor in Britain. He's 18 years old. He's won a by-election for us. Give him a big hand.
Thank you, everyone. Now, it was 3 weeks ago today that I found out that I get the honour and the privilege to represent Milton Regis as Reform UK's new councillor. It is a dream of mine, or was a dream of mine, to be the youngest councillor in the country, as it is everyone who is young and politically minded. And my God, I've done it. Milton Regis has a history that has lasted over 1,000 years, and I'm very proud to represent that and uphold it. I know there's many people in Milton who are fearful of the expansion of Sittingbourne in destructing their town's notoriety and history. But I will defend that, and I will make sure that everyone in Milton knows that they should be proud of their history, and I will do everything in my power to look after them and represent them as an elected official that I am. I will apologise for any little slip-ups. I was only noted 2 hours ago that I'll be speaking here, so I haven't really prepared anything. If you told me a year ago that I'd be standing here as the UK's youngest Reform councillor, I don't know what I'd have said. Because a year ago, I was a timid little boy at school being told that my views weren't right. And it was in March last year when I heard Richard Tice speak that inspired me. His conviction in what he said, it really hit me hard. I knew that reform was the future. And when I became a member at school, everyone laughed at me. And I'm not going to use the same quote, because it's already been used. But I'm here now, representing the country I love. Only reform would have got me there. And I say to anyone who's thinking of standing or thinks they have it in them, anyone who loves this country, stand for reform, help with reform, because you'll meet the best people you could ever meet. I've only been involved with the party for 3 months, and I'm a councillor. It's amazing. This journey is incredible, and I've met some of the most amazing people in my life. Jess Valentine, the hardest working man I've ever met. Ryan, he speaks for England, but by God, he's amazing. Max, I wouldn't have been able to do it without him. Simon and Ian at home, my family and my friends, they've all motivated me. Because, like I said a year ago, I would not be able to do this. But my country needs me. We all need to work together to save the United Kingdom. And I ask anyone, young and old, anyone, if you care about the future of your family, the future of your community, and the future of your country, get behind reform, become a member, and let's save Britain. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, there you are. We're a party of optimism. We're a party of belief. And as you can quite clearly see from those 3 young men, we are a party of the future of British politics. And things are about to change. We're going to see the biggest change we've seen in politics for 100 years. The biggest change in British politics since the end of the First World War and the Liberals disappeared and Labour came in. Something remarkable is happening. Thank you for all coming along this evening. I'm sorry for those that didn't get tickets but watched us on the live stream. For those still watching, join. I'm sorry it's been so cold in here, but the racecourse lost their winter fuel allowance. Now, when you leave, the bar will be open. Can you believe I'm on dry January? Why does no one believe me? I haven't even cheated. Mind you, I'm not sure, to be honest, I'm not sure I'm going to make it past President Trump's inauguration in Washington, D.C. And shouldn't we draw great inspiration from that Trump victory just a couple of months ago? People thought he was down and out, but he just fought on bravely, stood for the right things and won. And this won't be easy. You know, we got to level in the polls yesterday with Labour, well ahead of the Conservatives. The establishment are not going to come out with a tray of drinks. This won't be easy. We'll come under sustained attack. I know what it's going to be like. I've sort of been there before. But have faith in us. Believe in us. Don't trust everything that's written in the newspapers about us, and know what we're fighting for, and it is for the future of our country. If we don't stand up and do this, this great nation of ours will go down the drain. You all know that. That's where we're headed. We need courage, spirit, and to stand up for those values of family, community, and country. So when you leave, have a drink. When you leave, you'll find tables. You'll find a table for Kent, Sussex, there's a Hampshire one, etc. If you're not already part of a branch, if you haven't put yourself forward to be a candidate, you can do so at the end of this meeting at those tables. I would love to have finished tonight to say let's go into battle and fight that campaign on May the 1st. That was the object of being here. That has been stolen from us by an establishment that's terrified of us. But believe you me, we will not only get our own back, we'll get our own back and a lot more. Thank you very much indeed, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.